Payday 3 is a game with a few skills. Some of those skills unlock many opportunities and complement each other very well. Also recently with update 7, the assassin skill line adds even more opportunities for us heisters. But what if I told you that some of these skills unlocked the potential to become invincible? Okay, maybe not completely invincible, however, today I have a build for you all that allows you to negate a ton of damage, as well as deal out a good amount of damage too. This is Payday 3's best dodge build. What this build essentially is and how it functions is that it allows you to become somewhat of a mix of a support player and a damage dealer, with constant information on enemy locations through your throwables and equipment. The support aspect of this build is simply being able to use Death Knell, a newly introduced skill in the assassin skill line, to mark enemies using your throwables, and in return granting you information to your teammates and also buffing yourself and debuffing enemies who have been marked and are affected by your throwables. Whilst enemies are affected by your throwables and marked, if you are able to keep your buffs active, you not only do more damage to those marked enemies, but you can also dodge and tank a ton of damage from them as well. The reason this build is the best dodge build in Payday 3 is because the build and playstyle is very reminiscent of Payday 2's Sicario perk deck, which granted players the ability to use smoke grenades to give themselves an increased dodge chance. And hopefully with some examples of what this build is capable of, it will make a lot of sense as to why I have named the build as such. However, with the amount of smoke grenades we're going to be throwing about the place, I have appropriately named this build the Hotbox Build. Your objective is to hotbox the absolute f out of these heists, giving your team info whilst also buffing yourself. Before I kick things off and show you the build, let it be known that I have created 3 separate builds for this playstyle. The first build will be for when you're in a proper squad, maybe heisting with some buddies of yours and want to support them. And the other 2 are for when you're a solo player and either A, are solo queuing, or B, simply just playing solo with bots. I personally would recommend giving each variation a go and see which one you fancy the most. So, with that context out the way, let's get straight into the build. Weapons are completely subjective as it's all dependent on what you enjoy using the most. When it comes to dealing damage as well as keeping your buffs up, I'd go for either the KU-59 or the VF-7S. I'm personally a big lover of the KU, but once again, even weapons with lower fire rates like the SA can be viable as long as you're confident with keeping that edge buff alive. The one thing that is universal though is making sure one of your weapons has a suppressor to easily obtain and maintain rush in the assassin skill. Secondary once again, not a big issue, just use what you like. Armor is also subjective, but I'd recommend going for either the standard lining 1 plate or the adaptive armor 2 plates. Adaptive armor performs very similarly to Payday 2's armor system, meaning that once you take damage with it on, you have the opportunity to take cover and wait for it to regen, or using the holy trilogy of plate up, ammo funnel and replenish to instantly recharge your armor every 2 seconds once you get a kill. For your deployables, ammo bags are what you're going to be running for this variation, along with smoke grenades, which are essentially the most important aspect of this build. Keep that in mind. For your tool, I recommend bringing motion sensors for extra marking on units, as this is what this build is centered around, constant marking for you and your team. Now we have the equipment sorted out, let's move on to the skills. Starting from the top with Ammo Specialist, which increases your ammo capacity by 20%, as well as giving your ammo bags 2 additional charges. From there, we have Scrounger. This makes it so as long as you have Edge, you can have a 10% chance to gain a throwable every time you pick up an ammo box, which is going to be important for keeping your smokes topped up. Fully loaded for 2 additional charges to your ammo bags. Plate Up makes it so that your ammo drops will regenerate armor if you have Grit. This skill pairs really nicely with the 2 skills below, which I will get into in a bit. Next up we have High Grain. This one is very subjective, however with the amount of charges on your ammo bags that you're going to have, I say this skill is a no-brainer to take. What this does is that anyone who picks up ammo from your ammo bags gains the high grain buff. What this does is that it gives you and all your teammates increased armor penetration for 30 seconds. And seeing as though you're investing in ammo bags anyways, I'd say this is a great skill to pick up, as it not only increases your team's overall damage, but it also grants them ammo, fulfilling your support role. Top up is the mastery skill in this line, which will restore 20% more ammo and will also fully restock your nades, which is huge. Overall, this skill line is essential for buffing your ammo bags and pickup, which in return will allow you to buff your teammates as well as yourself. Next up is the mower skill line, which we will be picking 3 skills. Base mower to simply unlock the skill line, but also grants us edge every 35 bullets we shoot, so pretty much another way to grant us edge. But the 2 skills that matter the most from this line, ammo funnel and replenish, which when partnered with plate up above in the ammo specialist tree, grants you the ability to regen armor every 2 seconds upon each kill when you have both edge and grit. Ammo funnel makes it so any kill you get with edge active adds that dropped ammo from enemy units straight into your current magazine immediately. Partner this with replenish, which automatically picks up ammo for you from enemies you've eliminated, also allows for a constant cycle of ammunition to you. Pair these two with plate up and you have the holy trilogy, where you gain ammo and regen your current armor chunks very easily. The only stipulation is making sure that you have both grit and edge active, which is quite easy to do so as we go further down the tree. Speaking of which, let's continue down and pick up Clean Slate, a mastery skill which allows you to use an armor repair kit to fully replenish a plate. It's a no-brainer skill to bring. Now, this next part is very subjective, so I'm just going to make that known that this is all personal preference, which is the nice thing about this build. If you are an ADS Andy, then I'd recommend you go with Sharpshooter as your main avenue to gain edge. However, if you're a Hipfire Harold, then I'd say go with Gunslinger. For me personally, I like to ADS and make my shots count. Now, you don't need Sharpshooter Ace. You can just pick up the basic skill, which is the easiest way to pick up edge by simply standing and ADSing for 1.5 seconds. However, if you want to constantly just refresh your edge without paying too much attention, then go for the Ace version. But if you are not gonna Ace Sharpshooter, you have an extra skill point to place in whichever skill you wish. For now, let's move on to extra munitions, allowing you to go from carrying a maximum of 3 throwables to 5, which is quite essential seeing as this build is based around your throwables. Moving down into Enforcer, you want to pick up Enforcer Basic and Combat Reload. Enforcer makes it so then when you kill 2 enemies within 4 seconds that are 5 meters from you, you gain grit. Payday 3 for the most part is quite a close proximity kind of game, so activating grit with this shouldn't be too hard. Combat Reload is the skill that is going to allow you to keep both edge and grit active. By simply reloading, you refresh both edge and grit. Just make sure you do so when you still have ammo in the magazine, which if you have ammo funnel and replenish isn't super hard to keep your ammo topped up. Moving on down to Tactician, we're going to be picking up the base skill, which isn't very important, we just need that to unlock the skill line. What is important is Discombobulate, which gives enemies affected by your smokes and flashbangs a minus 40% damage debuff. This skill alone is fantastic as you don't even need any buffs active for it to come into effect. However, if you have your buffs up with this skill combined with the skills below, you get some very pleasant results. So let's talk about them. The Strategist skill line. You're going to want to pick up the base skill, which keeps enemies marked for 20% longer. Combat Marking, which allows you to deal 20% extra damage against marked enemies as long as you have edge. Threat Assessment, which allows you to take 20% less damage from marked enemies as long as you have grit active. And Misdirect, which allows you to have a 20% chance to dodge incoming damage from marked enemies as long as you have rush active. So now we are getting down to the meat and bones of this build. Essentially, if you manage to keep your buffs active, you can not only do more damage to your foes, but you also take less damage as well. And when rush is active, you have an increased chance to simply take no damage at all from marked enemies. I've gone over how you can grant both edge and grit, however I haven't covered rush just yet as it's further below in the tree and it's really easy, but I'll get to that in a bit. Next up, we're moving on to the Transporter skill line. Transporter Basic makes it so it unlocks the tree as well as every time you pick up a bag or body, you gain rush. But if you drop either a bag or a body, you lose rush, which won't be too much of a big deal as we have Assassin, which I will talk about later. Beast of Burden makes it so every movement speed penalty from carrying bags and bodies is removed as long as you have rush. We are then going to be picking up Deep Pockets, which will grant us a second deployable bag, which in this case means we now have 2 ammo bags, which results in more ammo, not just for myself, but for the team as well, fulfilling that support role. Lastly, we have Powerlifter, which grants the ability to carry 2 bags. This one is a give or take skill once again, so if you want to put your extra skill point elsewhere, then be my guest. But being able to carry 2 bags to help moving loot from one area to another is super helpful, especially if you're a solo player. In the Fortitude skill line, we have Stockpile, which is a mastery skill once again, which adds 2 more charges to your deployable bags, which we can now take full advantage of our ammo bags. And last but not least, we are down to the Assassin skill line. With this line, there are 3 skills that are equally just as important. Assassin's base skill allows us to simply grant us rush by simply killing an enemy with a suppressor. Killer Kinesthetics, which acts as a sort of combo skill, making it so killing a marked enemy will move that mark to another marked enemy. And last and certainly not the least, the most important skill in this build, Death Knell, which makes any enemy affected by your throwables become marked. This essentially means, with all of the skills we have invested in above, if you maintain your buffs, throwables, and keep enemies marked for yourself and your teammates, you're gonna have a great time with not only completely negating and ignoring damage, but also dealing a ton of damage whilst giving constant information to your teammates. Even bulldozers will not do anything to you if you trap them in your smokes. Yeah, it's that good. And to make this much more viable for solo players, you just need to change a few skills and that's it. So for the first variation, you're going to want to take off Fully Loaded, High Grain, and Top Up, and replace those skills with Medic Basic, Extra Charge, and Triage. Instead of bringing ammo bags, you're going to be making full use of your Doctor bags, giving them the max amount of charges. Although this does mean you won't be able to easily obtain smokes through ammo bags, you'll still be able to keep Scrounger for that 10% chance of getting throwables back by simply acquiring ammo boxes from enemies whilst having edge. And after showing you how easy it is to keep your buffs, Triage is a great skill, making better use of your meds, as you can get up to an additional 45% health from each first aid kit medic bag you pick up. Well, what if you want armor? Don't worry, I got you covered. Instead of going into the medic tree, spec into tank basic and extra plates for some more armor. Just make sure you bring an armor bag, of course. And you'll even have an extra point left over to spend at your heart's content if you were to spec into armor bags too. So perhaps a skill like Disengage might be good for you to bring for those pesky cloakers. And that is the build. Hopefully you find this video useful, and I hope that from the gameplay you're seeing on screen, you can somewhat get a gist of how this build works and how to play with it. Overall, it's a very fun build, allowing you to provide constant information to you and your teammates, whilst also being rewarded for doing so by taking less damage and doing more damage to marked enemies in the smoke grenades. The build provides a lot of flexibility as well, as there are plenty of skills that you can swap out easily to your heart's content. But hey, that's now for you watching this video to decide. So go ahead, give this build a try, and let me know what you think of it. And on that note, that is where the video is going to end. If you enjoyed what you saw and found this video helpful, then feel free to leave a like and subscribe if you're looking for some fun as well as informative Payday related content. Thanks for watching everyone, enjoy the Hotbox build, and I'll catch you all in the next one. Goodbye.